And what Poponin did back in 1995 was he wrote a paper called the DNA Phantom Effect. What he was trying to figure out is why when someone loses a leg, they still feel as if the leg's there, like they'll report it's itchy, my foot's itchy, but the foot isn't there. What they did was they took the tiniest part of us, human DNA, and they basically popped that inside the vacuum. The photons, which were sitting on the edge of the vacuum, moved. And what they did is they then created a pattern which was identical to the DNA. They literally copied the shape and the formation of the DNA. Isn't that interesting? Now, there was nothing making them do that other than the DNA being in there. So, how did it happen? Well, it turns out that DNA emits an electromagnetic field. And that electromagnetic field is like a blueprint or a scaffold that light is attracted to. Now, later on, we're going to talk about how your DNA actually uses light. But right now, I want you to just imagine what that means, because it's a bit freaky. It means that we're full of DNA, and right now, our DNA is having an effect through an electromagnetic field on things other than us. We're having an effect maybe on the space around us. Now, this dovetails perfectly with the second study, which was done by a, yes, I like that, which was done by a second group of scientists. This time it was a group of military scientists who wanted to see the effect of emotion on the DNA of army recruits. So what they did is they got a whole lot of army volunteers to donate their white blood cells. They took the white blood cells, they put them in petri dishes, and they stuck them in chambers where they could measure their electromagnetic output. They made them watch movies. They made them watch funny movies, sad movies, scary movies, action movies, and some others that made them aroused, but there are children in the room, so I won't go into that. And what they did is they measured the electrical output of those recruits. And at the same time, they measured the electromagnetic output of the DNA. What do you think happened? They matched, and they matched instantaneously. There was no delay. So literally, as they plotted the responses from the volunteers, they exactly matched the responses from the DNA. So, these being army researchers, they said, all right, let's see how far we can take these samples away. They were in the next room, so we'll move them further and further away. They kept repeating the experiment until they had the samples 350 miles, not kilometres, miles, away from the donors, and they still got instantaneous responses. This time what they did is they trained 28 researchers to be able to generate emotions on demand. So these researchers could get angry on demand, get very happy on demand, feel love and appreciation, all of these things on demand. And they gave each of them a petri dish with DNA. So there were 28 researchers and 28 petri dishes with different DNA. And then they asked the researchers to feel love, joy, gratitude. And they looked at the petri dish and the DNA in it to see what happened. And what happened was the DNA uncurled and codes switched on. They lit up. So then they asked the researchers, feel stress, anger, anxiety, feel aggressive. What do you think happened? Any guesses? It shrank. It coiled back up and codes switched off. So then they said, what if we can unwind this and ask them to feel the happy emotions again? And guess what? The DNA reverted back to the uncoiled, switched on state. So what does that tell us? It tells us that when we talk about negative emotions, we're not kidding. Those emotions actually shut down DNA, but they also shut down other people's DNA. Because this was not the researcher's DNA that was being shut down, it was a complete other person's DNA. But when we feel great emotions like happiness and joy, gratitude and appreciation, DNA switches on. So what happens in a classroom? What happens in the playground? What happens in a workplace if you have someone with a really strong negative emotion, do you think? Everyone shuts down. So when things switch off in our DNA, it's a bit like the ladders don't work anymore and things don't happen as they should, which is why we also know that anger, rage and stress affect our immune system. It's actually affecting it not just at the level of the immune system, it's affecting it from the DNA up. Now, interestingly, studies show that when someone feels an emotion really strongly, the effect is magnified. But if you get a group of people feeling the same emotion strongly, same thing, the effect gets magnified. So it is a contagion, which you guys were talking earlier about, bullying literally being like an infection. Well, it spreads like one too. Can you imagine if you have a child who's being bullied and they start to have a shutdown state? Why, I think one of the speakers earlier mentioned the child can feel like they've got a target on their back. And it's actually coming at the level of the DNA because they're shut down and they're unable to access their normal responses. And they discovered that every single cell in our body, via its DNA, has 3 gigabytes of memory. You actually have around 70 trillion cells in your body. It's a lot of zeros. 210 trillion gigabytes of memory per human body. So that's a 210 with 21 zeros after it. That's a lot of storage. They actually think that the mind is in our DNA. Well, apparently this is just a processing unit, because every time they try to find memories in there, they can't find them. They appear like holograms. They come from lots of different places, and guess where they come from? Stored in your DNA. Now this is really, really important, because it means that we as parents, if we've been bullied, there's a good chance that one of our children, or all of our children, might be likely to be a victim. We might know that we need to give our children aggression training, and that can start as young as 3 years of age to help a child understand their angry feelings.